able to see video and picture footage confirming that these rebels had arrived, which we can see right here in this clip. We can hear a large amount of celebratory gunfire as the convoy is now moving on its way towards the outskirts of Homs. The convoy has advanced practically unopposed from the southern outskirts of Hama just last night. We're able to see in the clip right here the preparations that are being made for that advance that will begin most likely very soon. You see the convoy now moving forward as others continue their preparation along the city's outskirts and its streets.
We're going to show you some of the coolest features we've ever seen.
That's seen in that clip right there, but once again showing the prep on the outskirts of Homs, conducting an indirect rocket barrage on the incoming rebel forces in a last-ditch, desperate attempt to at least try and slow the advance of the rebels. These efforts so far have proven unsuccessful as the rebels have marched on their way from Idlib towards Hama and from Hama to Homs. Moving on from that clip, it does appear that the Russian war by the Russian Federation's armed forces, including especially the Air Force, as the Russian Air Force has used this base as pretty much a staging point for close air support operations inside of Syria on a tactical level to support the ground forces. From what we understand, the situation, strategically, is no longer tenable for the Russian Federation to hold the Bashar al-Assad International Airport, or as it's called in the world, the Latakia Air Base. For the that the remaining assets of the Russian Federation at the air base are being evacuated further south and towards the base at Tartus. Tartus is a naval base where some of these vehicles and equipment may be picked up by the Russian Navy and then transported back into the Russian Federation on the long voyage all the way around the entirety of Europe and into a North Sea base. From what we understand, these are some of the last videos we will ever see of Russian military vehicles inside of the Syrian Arab Republic. These are a S-300 and S-400 surface-to-air missile system that is already moving out of the Latakia area and the Latakia Air Base and moving towards the port of Tartus just 30 minutes ago. Once again, largely showing that all the civil administration moving on from that clip in police office, which we can see right here. And that's the end of that clip right there, but once again showing the rebel.
Imagine Facebook
preparing its advance into al-Bakamal just about an hour ago. And we see them showing the convoy in its entire length as it makes this preparation to cross the Euphrates for the first time in years. The clip ends.
الله أكبر. قتل أبناء حمص العاديين. طاح. الله أكبر. تكبير. الله أكبر. الله حي الشباب، الله ييسركم. يلا الله ييسركم يا شباب. ميسرة. ايه أحمس ميسرة يا شباب.
İşte zalimlerin sonu budur. Diktatörlerin sonu budur. Diktatörlerin sonu budur. Allahu Ekber. Diktatörlerin sonu budur. Diktatörlerin sonu budur. Tüm diktatörlerin sonu budur. Topraklarımız özgür. Halep özgür. Halep bizim artık.
Kenneth Roth, he's the former executive director of Human Rights Watch. He's conducted several investigations of rights abuses in Syria, joins us now from Geneva. Thank you for your time. You've described the Syrian regime in the past as one of the most brutal regimes on earth. Your reaction to their fall today?
I have to say, few people are shedding any tears over the demise of the Assad regime. This is really one of the world's most ruthless regimes. And if you think about what they've done, they've executed or tortured to death thousands upon thousands of prisoners. They've used chemical weapons against their own people. They dropped repeatedly these notorious barrel bombs, filled with shrapnel, designed to maximize damage in civilian areas when those areas were held by the armed opposition. So this is a man who has been willing to do absolutely anything to retain power, with the effect that, some 12 million Syrians were forced from their homes, roughly half into exile, half displaced within the country. So, we all hope that this is an important new beginning. We don't really know that much about HTS. They say that they have reformed from the al-Qaeda past. They've been behaving better during this fighting. We just hope that this continues, and this really does mark a big positive new step for the Syrian people.
You mentioned the prisons. I mean, we've seen jubilant scenes at the main prison in Damascus and elsewhere where the opposition has gone to free people who've been imprisoned inside for years without trial, without many of them seeing their families. You've documented a lot of what's been happening in prisons in Syria under the Syrian regime. Tell us more about how many of the people got into those prisons and their treatment there.
Well, tens of thousands of people were imprisoned. What's remarkable is that we're hearing now of prisoners released where their families hadn't heard from them for decades. This is just, it's so brutal. It's so remarkable. I think the best insight we had into the prisons was when a former Syrian military photographer who used the code name Caesar escaped with photographs showing roughly 7,000 bodies. These are people who had been killed in Assad's prisons. So that gives you a sense of the magnitude of the brutality that took place here. And the people being released now, their lives have been destroyed by years and years of detention, but at least they're the lucky ones, they survived.
You mentioned the group HTS. Of course, it and some of its partners do have a violent past with allegations of conducting human rights abuses. It is also still prescribed as a terrorist organization by the UN and several governments. How concerned are you really about them essentially being in power of a country hugely divided by lots and lots of sects?
Well, I have to say, I've been heartened by the statements of Jelani, the HTS leader, stressing the diversity of Syria, stressing the importance of respecting these differences. At the same time, they've governed Idlib now, the northwestern province, for years. And, while they have not replicated Assad's brutality, it's not as if they've been tolerant of dissent. So, a lot remains to be seen. And, is HTS really going to allow some more rights-respecting version of Syrian rule to emerge?
Could you go into a bit more detail about what you mean by that? As you say, they have held control of Idlib. They have been essentially like the de facto government there for some time. As an organization, what can you tell us about their rule there?
Well, they really did try to build up a civilian government. So they were key in allowing the transfer of humanitarian aid from Turkey into northwestern Syria. They, began to build institutions, schools. They tried to resurrect the hospitals that the Syrian and Russian governments were bombing. So in that sense, they really did try to provide services to the Syrian people and show themselves, ready to be in government in that sense. But, of course, what you didn't have in Idlib is an opposition media, opposition political parties, critics. I mean, these basic political freedoms they didn't tolerate. And I hope that, now that they've won the war, now that they're not fighting against the Assad dictatorship, that a more politically tolerant version of HTS will also emerge.
With Assad now gone and the Prime Minister essentially saying that he will allow the people to choose their next leader. What are the main things you will be watching as a human rights group when it comes to the political transition?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, one can't just, hold a snap election tomorrow. When you've had a brutal dictatorship like this, you really do need to prepare. And so the first step should be negotiation for some kind of transitional government that allows political parties to emerge, that allows an independent media to emerge. And then you look to hold elections, a year, 2, 3 years down the road, when in fact, people have been able to prepare. And that's the kind of democratic transition that is most likely to succeed.
Okay, really good to get you inside. Kenneth Roth, former director of Human Rights Watch, speaking to us there from Geneva.
Add karo, order karo.
Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who's speaking here at the Doha Forum. Let's just listen in.
The territorial
Turkish president was repeating that he has been trying to reach a hand to Bashar al-Assad, but he was not responding. So now they have accepted the situation that Bashar al-Assad is not Syria anymore in terms of governance. Turkey has been supporting the Syrian people's will and the territorial integrity of the country, because a divided Syria might mean a divided Turkey. This is why territorial integrity, border security has always been very important in Ankara's rhetoric. And as we understood from Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan, they are embracing the recent developments and situation very warmly, but as he said, they're also observing, then acting. Of course, from now on, there is another case that is waiting for all regional players, how everything is going to be run. But currently, they will be supporting the new government and their steps, unless, the SDF, yes.
Yeah, basically, we certainly understand, I think, the Turkish perspective, certainly from, as you say, what the foreign minister said, and of course the history that both of these countries have with each other. The main aspect at the moment, and the big question mark, will be the return of refugees that have been hosted by Turkey these past 13 years, and the burden that Turkey has faced looking after them, and the problems that Turkey has also faced in terms of security of that northern border and southern Syria, which it's also taken charge of, parts of it. These are all questions, well, there's questions, aren't they, about how this is all going to be resolved and how quickly those refugees are going to return, if they want to Syria.
Indeed, because Turkey has been trying to promote the voluntary returns of Syrian refugees back to their countries. But of course, Despite Astana talks, the Sochi deals and everything, all these escalation zones have been violated by both the Syrian government and through Russian airstrikes. That's why it wasn't safe for the Syrians to return. But now they have liberated their country. Their main threat, which is the Bashar Assad government, is gone. And they have the government, the bureaucracy actually gave up on Bashar al-Assad. So that's why we heard Hakan Fidan saying that millions can now safely return home, which Turkey actually expects due to the reason that you have mentioned. And please, let's not forget, Turkey is also going through a huge economic dire strait, which gave a big loss to the ruling AK Party during the municipal elections and even decreased their votes in the general elections in 2023. That's why for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his government, being able to send Syrians back to their home safe and sound is a very important win, very important step, because either they had to make up with Bashar al-Assad, which didn't work at all, or provide a safe return for the Syrians back home. The second option didn't work, as Fidan stated, but now the safe return is possible, of course. Of course, in Aleppo, Hama, Homs, Damascus, everything must be returnable for those Syrians, because some of them lost their homes. Maybe when they go back, they're going to live in tents. Who knows what's going to happen? But many are now daring to dream of going back home.
Simon Kasula there for us on the Turkey-Syria border. Thank you.